Hello everybody, coming on to continue the series of videos that I'm doing on opening the psychic senses. And this video I'm focusing on the topic of fear and doubt. Those are the two aspects of our being that absolutely constrict our energy and stop the flow of intuition to come through us. Let me explain this energetically for a second. So in spiritual systems, everyone preaches that love is the only truth. And essentially love can be translated into the word light. So light is the truth. And that anything other than pure light is just merely the absence of light. Or anything other than pure love is just the absence of love. And in many ways, I feel this to be true. However, when you think about fear, which most people would proclaim that fear is the opposite of love, right? So it's the absence of love. And the opposite of doubt would be acceptance. That's how I would see it. That when we move into doubt and fear versus love and acceptance, the image that comes to my mind, and also what I see energetically with people that are in fear or in doubt versus love and acceptance, is when you're in a state of love, your energy field is really expanded and open and accepting to all the energies that it interacts with. It's like having your gate to allow people into your... Versus when you're in a state of fear and doubt, your energy is really constricted. It's pulled in. It's locked up. It's like you have the gate shut and deadbolted and locked in many different ways. That there's no entry. And the problem with that is that you can't receive the truth of your soul when you are constricted energetically. You block the flow of energy. So in Reiki and Kriya Yoga, which I've been attuned energetically for and have learned the practices of those two particular modalities, the whole goal was specifically with Kriya Yoga, which is kind of like Kundalini Yoga. The whole goal is to do like a daily practice where you're breathing and you're moving energy through your system so that you're actually clearing the vertical channel of your body. And if any of you know what Kundalini is really similar to the image of the caduceus, which we use on like EMT trucks, and for the medical symbol, it has a staff and then two snakes that kind of swirl up to the top, and the heads are at the top. In the ancient traditions of yoga, they say that these two serpents are actually the Kundalini energy of the spine. So the caduceus is really older than just Greek mythology or even from American medical origins. It's a very old symbol, and it represents the energy systems of our vertical channel. So like I talked about chakras before, we have our main chakras. We have a crown chakra which points upward and the root chakra which points down to the earth. And those are part of the vertical channel. The third eye, the throat chakra, the heart chakra, the solar plexus, the sacral, those are all horizontal channels. In the physical realm, we interact with our world horizontally with one another. So it's like me, it's you, it's this, it's that, it's the situations, it's everything on a horizontal plane. When it comes to connecting with the earth or connecting with the cosmos or source or a higher self, that's a vertical channel relationship. So when it comes to opening your psychic senses, which is essentially communicating with your soul or communicating to spirit, that's a vertical channel function of your energy system. So the idea in yoga is that you're doing these meditations, these visualizations, these breathing techniques, and seeing and releasing the energy of your Kundalini so that you can cleanse and clear any karma, which is unresolved issues within your energetic system, so that you can experience the divine directly and become in union with the divine that's within yourself. And in Reiki, the attunement process, when a Reiki master attunes to someone either at Reiki level 1, Reiki level 2, or at master level, the difference between receiving Reiki as a healing session versus being attuned is that when you're attuned, it's a vertical channel flushing of your system with Reiki. And that's what creates the ability for a practitioner to become a channeler of Reiki energy for healing for other people. It's clearing out that vertical channel. And I can say from direct experience and also from hearing of hundreds of other people's experiences with Reiki, that following Reiki attunements, all kinds of stuff comes up intuitively. Like your soul brings up all these past patterns come up, a lot of psychological, emotional, mental, and physical things start to heal in your system. And that's because the vertical channel is related to the horizontal channel. So, and we have the mental body, we have the physical body, we have the emotional body, and we have the spiritual body. They're all tied together. They're all overlapping. So when we clear things energetically, we're really working with the emotional and mental body also, and the physical body. So when we're talking about fear, which is an emotion, but it's also it's also part of our mental body, right? Because with fear, we have thoughts that produce the fear. The fear is actually an emotion of being constricted energetically. And then we have thoughts and we rationalize why we're feeling constricted energetically. And fear is absolutely adaptive many times to protect us. It's a defense mechanism psychologically for us to protect ourselves from being harmed or hurt. However, the human mind, the mental body, can create beliefs that are maladaptive, that continue these patterns well into adulthood of our life, where it's no longer serving us. It's no longer serving us to live a free and loving life. It actually binds us into a bondage that constricts us from being our authentic selves, because we are fearful to express ourselves in all of the different aspects that we have. Now, with intuition and fear itself, there's many different levels of fear. Fear can be like I'm going to start just with chronologically with my age, and also with just what I've read about fear and intuition. When we're children and we have paranormal experiences, which I have to also argue through my research, in some cultures, what we consider paranormal is absolutely normal to them. So I don't even really like the term paranormal, but it's the best way to describe, unusual or anomalous experiences. There's lots of words, but experiences that are not of the physical world. When we have these experiences in a culture like ours that is highly identified with the physical world, that dismisses any of those things as being real or not real, that it creates a cognitive dissonance in us, because our direct experience is conflicting with everyone else's version of what reality is. That cognitive dissonance creates a need for us to maintain our safety at some way. So we either can suppress it and forget about it, or we can manage it by becoming fearful of it and thinking that, since this defies everyone else's experience or perception of what reality is, then there's something wrong with me, and it can become a shameful thing, which then translates to later versions of fear. So if you have origins like that, then when you get to be an adult and you have spiritual experiences, it's common for us people that have these kind of experiences to move into adulthood and then feel fear about confiding in other people, about disclosing our experiences to other people, especially if we have a history of disclosing to, like, let's say our parents or our siblings or our friends as children, and having them dismiss us, judge us, criticize us, or call us crazy. Then we have created a kind of complex around the paranormal, spiritual, non-physical experiences as being not safe to confide in other people. So then there's a whole nother layer of fear. And just like me too, when I started to have a lot more paranormal experiences after I turned 30, especially with spirits, like people's loved ones, I became extremely fearful of even engaging with the spiritual dimension, because I thought if I open that door and willingly engage with the spiritual dimension, I will never sleep again. I had this belief because when I was a kid, I was wide open, even though I didn't consciously choose to be wide open. I just was as a kid. And no matter what I did to close that door, I couldn't shut it. That it was wide open all the time, and spirits would be in my room at night, every night, and I barely slept. I was struggling with sleep issues all of my childhood. I urinated the bed because I was too terrified to go to the bathroom. I had so many issues around sleep. And so when I turned 30 and I started having these experiences with spirit again, I said, oh no, if I open this door and willingly work with the spirit realm, they're going to start coming into my house and bothering me and not allowing me to sleep. But this is another reason why I really felt the need to learn about psychic development, to go to intuitive classes, and learn how to control and manage my intuition, which I didn't even know if that was possible, but I had to learn more about what is this and how do you use it? Can I use it instead of having it use me? And through all of that education and training, I've learned that I can shut down my psychic senses so I'm not so wide open at night. I can call in protection. I can actually create a barrier around my home so that it's a space of non-activity with the spirit dimension, at least with any spirits that aren't my loved ones that have passed over, and really claim my space, which I do, and I don't have any activity in my home. So that belief that I had stopped me from developing for quite a while, and progressing in my intuitive development, because I was so fearful of opening to the spiritual realm because of prior traumatic experiences. So we can have fear of the actual phenomenon, we can have fear of sharing our experiences with others, and we can have fear of willingly and openly engaging with the spirit realm. Now, another aspect of fear I want to talk about, which I'm reluctant to talk about because I don't want to feed into more fear, but there's also fear that people have about real evil in the spiritual dimension. And I'm not going to say there's no evil, because there's light and there's the absence of light. However, in the spiritual realm, when you communicate with your soul, and I've done a lot of communicating with my soul and writing it out, and I'm actually planning on sharing some of the channeled messages I've gotten from my own soul about this topic, that the spiritual truth is that there is no good, there is no bad, there is no right, there is no wrong. There's only light and absence of light. There's no judgment. And that all of it has a purpose and a meaning and a function. And that our soul magnetizes the experiences to it that it needs or wants to go through. And this is a really controversial topic, because I know there's a lot of people out there that say, well, how do children, call the experience of being raped to them, or call the experience of starving to death to them? Why would anyone do that? This I can't answer. It's the reasons why, the question why is such a gigantic question, and it's so outside of the framework of the physical realm that we cannot fathom the giganticness of all of it. I've had glimpses into it, and so I can see that even the most horrific of human actions has a purpose and function and does serve our soul in some way. I'm not going to get tremendously into that topic because that's really controversial, and a lot of people have heated debates over this. But the fact is that there is spiritual forces that are terrifying, and my advice to people who have had direct experiences with those kind of terrifying forces is that when you maintain a clean, cleared energy body, your vertical channel, like the practice I talked about before, when you maintain a clear energy channel, you are much more purified and refined to call the experiences to you that you are wanting to with intention. That some evil thing isn't just going to come slap you in the face. And as you develop your intuitive gifts, you will also build stronger connections with your spirit team. So we're in the physical, but we're also in the spiritual. We're gigantic spiritual beings in some other dimension. And those spiritual beings that we are has a multiplicity of expression. So we have angels, we have guides, we have all these things that you always hear mediums and psychics talking about. They are absolutely paramount to us in our development. And I had access to a really, really positive, loving, supportive energy when I was a kid that I could only interpret as guardian angel, because that was the only words I ever heard as a kid. But I had not known that I could call upon that guardian angel when I was terrified at night because of the shadow figures, until I was about 12 years old, and I had a positive spirit experience where a spirit came to me and sent me unconditional love and said, I'm here to help and protect you. And then I called upon that entity and that energy, and I never saw the shadow figures again. So I started to build inner resources and connections to these guides that were on the other side that I had experiences with before, but I didn't know that I could call upon them to help protect me. And now I don't necessarily feel like I need to call on my guides, that I feel the spiritual power within myself to protect and claim my own energy. But for a while it took me leaning on my spirit team to develop the inner resources and inner strength and belief that I can protect myself. So that's my bit about evil. So if you have any fears, any of these fears around intuition, it's going to constrict your energy field, and it's going to prevent you from being in that open receptive space. And that's why the second video I talked about creating your sacred space, dropping in while you're alone into that meditative space, and just becoming a receiver where you feel safe and where you've created, you know, a ritual, and you are really getting good at practicing and repeating that experience over and over on a daily basis to build a really strong connection to your soul, which ultimately builds a really strong belief and direct experience of the truth of that soul connection, which is just pure love. There is no absence of love in that connection. And when you have that strong relationship with your soul, it's almost like fear can't exist in that space. It's harder for us to be connected with that pure love when we're in waking consciousness walking throughout the day, because we're in a different brain state. Although I believe with practice you can switch back and forth pretty quickly. So when we're in waking consciousness, we don't feel that immense love like we do when we're in the meditative state and communing with our soul. But our soul is always there. Our soul is us. We are a soul. We just have a body. So that's what I have to say about fear. That, you know, if you have any of these fears about any of these things, that is the number one thing you want to work on healing in your sacred space, so that you can begin to open up your energy field to allow your psychic senses to open and for your soul to really become embodied. Because you have to feel safe to allow that spiritual connection to just blossom within you. The second bit I was wanting to talk about is this idea of doubt. And like I said earlier, doubt, I would say the opposite of doubt is acceptance. So doubt, even though doubt it's described as doubt, which is its own word, it's actually a subset of judgment. Because whenever we doubt something, it's ultimately because we have judged something to not be valid or real, right? So there's judgment behind the doubt. So that practicing your mindfulness and going into that neutrality state where you're practicing the non-judgmental open-mindedness, as that non-judgmental open-mindedness becomes pretty much an aspect of who you are, that'll open up your state of being able to move into acceptance of all the different variations of expression that your soul wants to bring to you. And that doubt is also multi-layered. So I wanted to talk about the different layers of doubt and intuition. I'll speak to the one that is the most prominent. So, something I still struggle with. I think that every intuitive person, no matter how famous or professional or how absolutely great they are at what they do, still has some level of doubt. I think it's healthy to have doubt. I think it's humbling to have some doubt. Without doubt, we would be one-sided and we would become unbalanced. So it's healthy to have some doubt. But with doubt being a part of when we receive information, and let's say when we're doing soul-to-soul practice, either with a living person or with someone that is passed over, the doubt that comes up that prevents us from speaking what we're getting because it's so ridiculous, or you don't know how to interpret what you're getting, and not just saying what you're getting and you're starting to interpret and doubt it, that stops the flow of information from moving through that vertical channel. So that is ultimately every intuitive teacher's ultimate goal, is to help their students to move out of doubt. And the best way to do that is just by repeated exposure to going into that receptive space and just saying what you're getting when you're connecting with another soul, and having that other soul say, hey, that's meaningful and makes sense to me. So some examples of this, I can use some examples of my own. In the intuitive development circle, there was one time when we were doing a practice where we were practicing using our clairsentient function, which is the inner feeling, the clear feeling. And I was talking about how you can get a symbol that your body or any of your clairsenses would give you for when something is true and when something is false, or when it's a yes or it's a no, or even when it's an I don't know or a maybe. So we did a guided meditation, and I asked questions and had people just be receptive as to what symbol comes up for them for a yes, a no, and a maybe. And for me, a yes is a tingles all over my body. A lot of psychics, intuitives get that. Like when they get chills rushed through their body, it's always like an affirmation, like yes, yes, whatever is being said is true, whether they're talking or someone else is talking. Then for a no, for me, it was a constriction of energy. It feels like fear. It's like, it's like almost like hitting a wall, like no. And then the maybe was like this sideways feeling for me, clairsentiently. And then I had some visuals that represented those too, but we were doing clairsentient practice. Then we were paired together, and the sitter, which is the person that the reader is reading, would ask questions that they knew answers to about themselves. So that would look like, the sitter would say, do I have 2 dogs at home? And then it was the job of the reader to use the yes, no, or I don't know, or maybe, to answer that question and to not use their mind. So in this situation, it's easy, if you know anything about that person, to use your mind and say, oh, she doesn't seem like a dog person. But it's different to drop into your soul space and allow your soul to answer through your body, through your psychic senses. So in this situation, I was sitting in front of someone, and they asked me a question, and they said, do I like to go swimming? And I closed my eyes and dropped in, and I got a yes, no, maybe. I got all of them. And I moved into doubt. I went, what the hell was that? Like, why am I feeling the tingles, and then the constriction, and then the sideways feeling, like pretty much simultaneously? And so I sat there for a second, and then I decided to close my eyes and drop in and just ask my soul, what does this mean? And then I had a bunch of images come in. This was a moment that I've never forgotten. It was so powerful. It was literally just like a minute-long reading, but it was such a powerful practice for me that I'll never forget. And I looked at her and I said, well, I'm not getting a yes, a no, and a maybe. I'm getting like all of them. Let me explain to you why. And I said, so I saw these images. And as you develop your clairvoyance, you can have images rush in, but as you develop your clairvoyance, you can pull those images back and you can look at them and zoom in, and you can slow it down, and you can pull each of the images back and really examine them. So I did that. I called the images back. I went to the first one, and it was a little girl in a lake with her family, and she was drowning. And they pulled her out, and they were like doing CPR, and she's spitting up water. And then the second one was the same girl but older, like a 10 or 12 years old, and I'm getting chills all over talking about this because this is a real thing, with parents at a pool encouraging her to learn to swim, but I could feel how scared she is, but she's facing her fear. And then the last image was her as she is now as an adult swimming, and the feeling like I would become her in the vision and see how she feels about the swimming, and it's like she's not afraid of it, but she doesn't necessarily like it. So I told her, I said, I see the image of you as a child. I see you drowning. I see that you really became afraid of the water, and then your parents encouraged you to do swimming lessons, and you were adamant about overcoming your fear, and now as an adult you're just not really for or against it. And she just looked at me like, how do you know all of that? And I'm like, I don't know this. I don't know any of this. This is just, I was just being a receiver for the information to come to me. It's not me that knows this stuff. It's the energy of the question that she asked, that in my soul that's answering the question. So if I would have gone with the doubtful feeling I had with the first yes, no, and maybe all happening simultaneously, that would have been an opportunity lost. But instead, I trusted that the answer I got was true and valid. It was just my job to unfold it, to make the story come out of it, to have it be meaningful. So when I dropped back in and I asked my soul, what does this simultaneous yes, no, and maybe mean? And I had all those images. This happened so quickly. I can't argue like how quick this happened. Probably 30 seconds when I saw those basically videos, me bringing them back and engaging with them and then sharing with her what I got. And she verified that, yes, all of those things were absolutely true. She drowned, and she was just, kind of shocked. And I was shocked too. Like, this is the power of intuitive development. You're just amazed every time you get information that it's just like, how the hell do I know that? And I can't tell you, after years of developing, I've just come to realize that it's not me. When I realize it's not me, then I don't have to have fear and doubt about what I'm relaying. I just trust that my soul is giving me information that this person needs to hear. And before every reading, I have an intention, a prayer that I say, and I say, allow what my soul communicates to me to come through clearly, and for the understanding of the sitter in front of me, but also for the highest and best good for both of us, so that everything I communicate is for the higher good for both of us. So in this situation, it was really validating for me, but it was also validating for her that this intuitive development stuff works when you really get out of your own way and get out of that doubt. It was a really cool experience, and I've had so many of those in my development that has just made me realize that, we're not separate, that our energy is really united in a different dimension. So her experiences became my experiences, and I experienced them as she did, and I knew how that impacted her simply by setting the intention to answer her question and listen to my soul senses. So it's one example of how to move out of doubt. But really, ultimately my personal experience of moving out of doubt has been just repeated exposure and validation, and practicing and practicing and practicing. It's the best way to get out of doubt. And I can tell you that when you get into a space where you really solely trust your soul to give you information that's pertinent and relevant, that it happens. It's almost like your expectation sets up for it just to happen, and there's no effort. It's not like I'm sitting here concentrating and using my mind. It's a complete opposite of that. It's a complete surrender of the mind and allowing that vertical channel to just become basically like a canvas for the energy to imprint on. And then I use my ego to interpret and relay and speak those information out. So the ego isn't necessarily the enemy in this situation. The ego is actually being utilized for the soul. It's being subordinate to the soul. It's serving the higher will in this situation. And that's what I mean by intuitive development being more of a lifestyle. It turns more into an experience where it's really becomes the way you live, because the more you listen to your soul and you act from the soul space and not from the fear and the ego space, the more you will see magic happen in your life, and synchronicities happen, which is what I'm going to talk about in one of the videos coming up, is synchronicity. Because when you start to really live and act from the guidance of your soul, connections happen with people and with situations, and it's amazing. And it really is, because we're not separate energies. We are united, and we have access to all of the energy to work in our favor and to work for the highest good of what our soul is trying to orchestrate in our lives. It's a very, very rich and important topic to address, especially in intuitive development, and there's so much more I can say about fear and doubt. It's ultimately what a major piece of my thesis is about, that I'm writing about. It has to do with our history of our science paradigm and its complete refusal to acknowledge the reality of the spiritual dimensions, and how that has indoctrinated fear and doubt in the validity and reality of these experiences. And that's why it's so important for us within this culture to just practice and develop, and to just have direct experience after direct experience after direct experience, and the validation process is so important. And that's why we do the intuitive development circles, because it helps to give people that opportunity to be validated. Again, if you have any comments or questions about what I've talked about today, please comment or private message me if it's something personal. I'm here to assist you, and I look forward to continuing the videos, and I will see you all in the next video. See you later.